Hello, everybody. Thanks for being here. Thanks for joining. The stream will start in about 4 minutes. Well, the stream's already started. Top of the morning to you, people. The music you were just listening to was being conducted and tweaked with live on my other machine here, and I'm just directly streaming it to you guys. Today's an exciting day, just like all the other days I've streamed. This is my third time streaming, and you'll be seeing a 3-hour demo play out. I've stated this before, where I can't exactly paint and talk at the same time. I always struggle with that. So what I've done is I pre-recorded all my steps in real time, not time-lapse. And I'll just be talking to you guys, answering your questions. And I wanted to talk about insecurities, artist growth, and perseverance, getting through all that. And anything else you guys would like me to cover, I'm open. Just as long as it's not about NFT, because I don't understand any of that stuff. I haven't been really looking into it. So, how's everybody doing? I hope you guys are doing good. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Hi, Andre. Hi, Martin, Max, Emmanuel. Hey, hello, Emmanuel. That's my walk-in. So, I guess I could load up the screen you guys are supposed to be watching. I know my face is beautiful and all, but this isn't what we tuned in for. I'm just kidding. Here we go. So, this is the beginning stage of usually how I start my pieces. I start a line drawing, and I go with it. I see where it takes me. I treat my line drawings just as a simple indication, very loose, and sometimes I go in deeper. What you see above here is my color palette reference image. And what I've done is I have these images here, and I have pixelated them. These are corridors I found on Pinterest, which are upside down. This image is turned upside down on purpose, so I don't get influenced by its literal detail. So I'm just looking at light and darks, and even more so abstracted into these swatches of color palettes. And roughly I'm kind of guessing already that it's going to be a pretty limited palette, which I like, especially for a cinematic frame. And then I go at it. Thank you. It's really good to see you too. Some of you guys have very interesting names, so excuse me if I don't say them right. But I'll do my best. And if you guys have questions, I will try to answer them. I'll address them to you as per person. And there might be a little bit of a delay, so be patient. Yeah. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And this is the beginning of the demo. I start with a soft brush and I sort of block everything in loosely. I start with a overall tone. I used to not work like this. I used to directly start by placing in a photo and painting on top of the photo, using the photo as a base, and that works great too. But I feel like after a while, I ended up, and so does every artist. You find your thing, you find your comfort zone, and you stick with it. And I've been loving this way because it's complete control, and it feels free. It feels very freeing. You're not bogged down by the photographic elements. You're not worried about things sticking out. So that's a great question, Andre. The story behind this picture is a telephone. And it's really about creating this tone and mood about this phone booth. I wanted to create something that feels like there's time ticking away. Hence, the music that I was playing in the beginning is sort of the backdrop to this. The musical track was created before I made this piece. And while listening to that music, I was thinking of this visual. Let me see if I could sort of relate it. So if this is the track, and then the time ticking aspect is playing in the back, I will play this again the further the painting goes. But this is where the idea came from, is the sound of this. Listen carefully. Right? There's an intensity to that, and I needed to follow through with it to the very end. The colors to me are acidic and erosive, kind of rusty, and I also am pulling from the mood that I love in The Matrix and City of the Lost Children. There isn't a concrete story like beginning, middle, and end. I just wanted the tone to be around this phone booth and the characters around it to feel sort of oblivious as to what needs to happen or what is happening. For once, I'm trying something different with my personal work, and that is that the central focus isn't revolving around a person, a being, or an animal or a creature. It's about something inanimate. And I don't usually do that. I like to relate my topics to something human. And in doing that, I'm also, I guess I'm translating this as a sort of science fiction-y, cyberpunk-y take. So yeah, I hope that comes through by the end of it. Here you see me blocking in the darks, and I have a middle ground of what should bleed through. So the wash you saw me do earlier is the same way when you would paint on a canvas. You start with a burnt sienna type of rub, and then you do your alla prima head portrait. That's where it comes from. That's not the only way to paint by any stretch of the imagination, but I do like that. I like having something textural, something flawed to paint on top of. It gives it life. It gives it something of a breath. I let that color bleed through. So in terms of blocking in these shapes, it's kind of at a random stage. I'm not really thinking about where or what is supposed to be light or dark. I started, of course, with the most familiar thing, which is the guy's head, and understanding the planes. I picked my light source by making his right side dark. So now I have to somewhat follow that. But considering that this is maybe an exterior and nighttime, maybe there's multiple light sources and maybe there's an ambiguity to it. So that's also a little bit of a pre-planned liberty. I don't want to. I guess I tend to do this a lot with my personal work. Is I don't want to tie myself down with something that will force me to pay even closer attention than I should be to detail and just making things too blueprinty and by the book rule type of approach to the work. So I like to sort of start with an abstraction always. So if I'm squinting my eyes, it's very vertical and there's some type of elements that are breaking up in the middle, but then I continue with vertical type of shapes, and my brushstrokes are even that. I'm not trying to go horizontal as much. So let's talk about some of the topics I had mentioned. What did I say? Insecurities and growth. I guess first of all, I should probably talk a little about myself for those of you who are new here. Of course, my name, Alexander Mandradjiev. Hello to everybody who's joining still and unaware to what's going on. This is a live demo. I'm playing back a live demo. I'm not talking and painting. For your pure quality intake, I don't want to be pausing my painting while talking because that's what happens. I've been working in the film industry for about a little bit over 15 years for various companies, and currently working at Marvel Studios with a top-notch team of artists that always push me forward and always challenge me to do better and better work. And I feel like that's always been the case since I started working. However, it came with my insecurities, and it's part of the growth, which pushed me to persevere. I remember starting at a game company when I was 2 years prior my art center graduation, and I was unemployed for 2 years, right? And in those 2 years, a lot of stuff went through my head, a lot of self-doubt, and it built up a lot of insecurities. And it's a lot of reflecting on what people had told me through Art Center, on what I should have worked on what I should have focused on, details, how to render, how to do this and that. And those were very valid points. However, in a certain way, it locked my mind, and I had a hard time opening up and exploring my personal strength in with this tool of painting. So I was trying a variety of things. I tried imitating to be Drew Struzan, and to do character designs. I was influenced by my teachers and my classmates and close friends even. I thought maybe I could try creatures, and Anthony Francisco, really close friend of mine, we worked together. He was a source of that inspiration for creature and character. Same with Kevin Chen, who's one of my mentors for a long time. He runs the Concept Design Academy School in Pasadena. I was kind of lost. I was lost in my own head. I didn't know where to go, and you would think that would be a good thing, to be lost in your own mind. But I guess it differs. I guess it's a different thing. So I eventually realized that I needed to do something that catches people's attention. And in doing that, I created pressure for myself. And I've heard other artists talk about the similar thing, is where you start to feel maybe like you're a fraud, and you start to create pieces that make you feel like, I'm just ripping off this or that. But it's a beginning. It's a beginning to a journey that will lead you to discovering where you should be. I feel like the danger is that you might feel like that's it. You've hit the peak. You don't need to do anything else. It's as best as it could get. You're comfortable. But thankfully, thanks to places on the internet like CG Hub and now ArtStation, you get to sort of compare yourself to other artists, and you assess and you see what are they doing, and it's tons of beautiful work, and what am I doing? And you sort of you build up this library in your head, and you find yourself kind of recalibrating what you want to think about or what you want to say with your work. That is of course, if you have similar tastes to what other people are doing and you really love doing that exact one thing, I don't want to be specific or name genres or anything like that. It's just where I'm getting with this is that this is one element that I can remember that really spawned a great deal of pileup of insecurities in me. So when I actually started work, um, when I started working at this game company, which was uh, thanks to another great friend of mine, Jackson Z, who I also work with. He's a supervisor at Marvel Studios. Um, he recommended me to this place called Spark Unlimited, and I was interning there. I really pushed myself hard, and I worked day and night just to prove myself, just so I don't fail. And there were times when coworkers would go, "Hey, if you want a little bit off your back, we could help you out." And I took that defensively as like I'm not doing good enough, or I'm slacking, or I'm turning in half-assed work. I'm piling on so much more than needed, and I am kind of not realizing that I'm doing a poor job. I took that in a bad way. I mean, I guess that was my insecurity. But they genuinely wanted to help, so my response was like, no, 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 I got it, and I'd I'd walk away. I'd sit at my cubicle and I'd continue painting whatever they asked me to paint. Anyway, 2 years after that, I got cut. The company went through a change. The interns got cut, and most of us left anyway. But after that, I looked through the body of work I produced there, and I was pretty proud of it. And I thought that's pretty good. And now it's time to move on. Next big step. I already made it through the door, so to speak. And you do. I mean, once you work for the first time, you've cracked open the door. You have experience. You have applied yourself, your social self, to your coworkers. You've made connections. It's more about communicating, and it's more about being a person to other people, rather than how skillful you are with your pieces. I mean, when you're starting, at least, that's my advice, is think about it as more about how you show yourself. Your work will grow, and the professionals that hired you know that. They're not expecting you to be top-notch right off the bat when you're starting off. But that's not what I thought. And when I got cut, the day I got cut, I was both happy that now I'm moving on to the next chapter of my life, and I was also pretty shocked. This is the best way to say it. I was pretty shocked, and I didn't know what was going to happen next. Who am I going to contact? What am I going to do? So I started calling people. I started calling friends and asking if there's work, sending my portfolio, and the feedback was kind of disappointing. The work wasn't up to par. And I thought, because I had worked now 2 years or 3 years, I forgot how long I worked at Spark, that now my work is definitely super pro. Like, it's everything anyone could dream of. My head was inflated. I was way in over my head. So that broke me, and I was kind of like, I built up even more insecurities. I was telling myself, like, oh, now they really truly think I'm a fraud, and I don't know if this is a good start. Am I a joke? Are they laughing at me? Do they think my work is this or that, and this guy's just doing this? And just to backtrack a little bit, when I was going through Art Center, I was in workshops where people would have conversations like that. I don't know if you guys have ever experienced something like this, but I would sit next to people in workshops where they would talk about how something is executed. And this is for fundamental drawing. This is for figure drawing or head drawing. Or this person, when he draws a hand, he doesn't use the cylinder shape, so his form is all wonky. His form is, I can't believe he just, and that's how he wants it. Hey, what are you guys talking about? Oh, nothing, man. How are you doing? Like, I heard you. I heard how you were whispering amongst each other. So, anyway, that would play through my head now unemployed again. And I'm thinking like, man, I wonder if that's how things are. It comes back to you. And this happened again and again through a variety of different jobs. Once you get cut, it goes through your head. And it's a personal thing. I never really opened up about it to anybody until more recently, I guess, in the past couple or several years. But insecurities are a brick wall. That's what I'll say. Whatever it might be, the best thing to do, in my opinion, is either take them and use them as fuel to create something powerful and unique in your work. Imagine that. Imagine using an insecurity, a fear, and transforming it into a feeling for a painting or music or a movie. Otherwise, the other thing is literally hands pulling you underwater, and you don't know what it is. You don't know why you can't produce. It's the real mind block to creativity, is this fear. And that's what I did. There was a point in my artistic journey where I kind of faced my fear, and I started to reflect on things that was taught to me as a young adult by my father and by other wise people in my life, my mother and my grandfather. It's usually around family, because they really open up and tell you important things and metaphorical stuff. And being that I'm Bulgarian, it's amped up. It's very saturated with like these stories that teach you life lessons. And I started to reflect on that, and I started making paintings. I remember my first painting that I did for myself was a story that came from a question I had asked my father when I was too young to understand the value and importance of money and saving money. So I asked him this question: Dad, if you had to dig up, if someone buried money and you had to dig it up, would you do it? Would you really put yourself through that and do it? My dad simply answered, yes, money is money. I will dig up the entire backyard if it meant that I'll find money, if I needed it, if time called for it, and your ass is starving and you're asking me dumb questions, I will have to dig up that money to feed you. And I kind of just, that stuck with me. And that was the first painting I did. I literally, I never posted. I never got it to a place where I was comfortable to share it. But it was the first painting where I I started to think about emotion. I started painting my father in rain, mud beneath his feet, and he's digging with his bare hands to get to a. And the shot is dissected, kind of like an anthill, you know. You're seeing both the underground and above ground. And he's digging with his bare hands to get to a shoebox, which probably has money in it. I was also thinking about it in a cinematic way. It's like you don't know what it is. I remembered The Good and Bad and the Ugly, and when they're digging up the grave for the gold coins, I still wasn't certain if they're gonna hit a box filled with rocks or if it was gonna be gold coins. So, so yeah, that was kind of that came from Insecurities. That was my beginning stage of using what was breaking me, and this didn't end it. It just I started to convert fears and weaknesses into fuel for my art, and in a way, you're sort of facing you're sort of facing your fears like that, and to me, there's nothing better than that. You grow, you make leaps. I'll look at your guys' comments here and questions. I just wanted to say something for the current stage of my painting. You see me cutting and pasting things from the reference, and I'm putting it on a lighten layer, and I'm trying to get shapes, interesting shapes for lights. And I'm kind of also matching it with my underpainting and drawing. So I am now starting to add a little bit of logic, but at the same time, I'm going off of what's there, what's happening randomly. Let's see. Wow. Hello, everybody. Everybody who's joined. Thank you for joining. I'm just going through the comments. Hey, Nabs. Hey, Pramod. And hello, everyone. Hey, Alex. Hey, Commentator JR. How's it going? You know, somebody asked me on Instagram to talk about if I ever use 3D and what my process is to paint on top of 3D. I generally don't do that unless I'm asked to, specifically because the accuracy of the model or whatever. But if that's the case, I literally plop down the 3D object and I paint on top, or I do a quick trace of the model itself, and I color pick from the model, repainting it. I don't like things to sort of bleed through. I can spend a good amount of time integrating things into each other so you can't tell what is painted and what is photo or 3D, but I'd rather just work a bit more freely, and that's faster for me. Sammy asks, would you approach professional work the same way without exactly knowing the light setup yet? Yeah, I do approach it like that because it's also about searching excitement in your work. You're searching for something that will thrill you, and there's no better thing than that. You sort of stumble upon these happy accidents that guide your mind through your piece. As long as you are accomplishing the goal of your painting that you're being asked to do, you're fine to explore with methods and techniques that get you exciting results. Hey, Sai, thanks for joining. Thank you. Hey, Zephu. Hey, Noel. Selim. The atmosphere of the color scheme reminds me a bit of Dark City. Well, thank you so much. This is actually, in a way, inspired by films of that nature, and also The Matrix and Blade Runner and Roger Deakins like cinematography, if anything. Um, so I was telling a story about using fears and insecurities to fuel your art, to push yourself forward instead of staying in the same place. It's about converting it immediately, converting that state of mind, and you immediately unlock yourself from a mind block. That's how I like to see it. That's how I like to feel about it, is that once you start to sink in dark waters, well, embrace that sinking feeling and you create a new piece with it. And then you realize that it's just a feeling, it's just a dream. However, there are times where people go through really rough experiences. That is different, I'd like to say. But you could still use that as an inspiration for the future. Sometimes um, we're tested, we're put through things in life that derail you, and no matter how hard you try to stay clear-headed, it gets even more. It gets even more impossible because you're constantly reminded of this one experience. And the best thing to do probably is just to wade through that. It's dark. And I know I'm getting into a dark place here, but the point is growing with that. I mean, as artists, we're human, and we're flawed, and maybe a little bit crazy, and weird, and we have things that no other person will relate to. We have thoughts that get our mind thinking and taking, to create, to be inspired, that nobody else will ever understand. In a way, it's like when I used to teach at Concept Design Academy. I tried to figure out, how do I teach the idea of painting from feeling, or painting from dreams. It can't just be about literally translating visual aspects of the dream. I mean, that is a cool idea, but it can't just be that, because the dream is more about how it felt in the moment to be there. And I've tried remembering specific dreams, and I've created them into painting. And when the painting's done a month later, when I look back, I remember that I did that based on a dream, and I asked myself, is this does it feel like the dream? And to me, no, it didn't. I didn't achieve what it means to capture a feeling. And capturing a feeling is very different for everybody looking at the piece. I could be feeling one thing right now with this painting, and you guys can be interpreting it in a very different way. I will never know. But rather than that being an insecurity, or something to keep you from creating the work, or to start over and not go with your instinct. I see it as a beautiful thing, as a literal connection with another person's mind, soul, if you want to call it that. Because I believe that creating music and paintings and evoking strong story and emotion through film, that is it's a very different way to connect with a person, aside from, as opposed to words and writing, and you're connecting on a subconscious level. And it's when you're creating a painting, especially, even the process of the painting alone, it's like you are sharing a dream. It's like it is an internet for dreams. So that's where I have always been in my work. I've always thought about it as a this plane of existence where it's neither real or fake. It's kind of like this limbo state of a reality where anything goes. Imagine the same process when you are working with a group of artists at the same time, like on a program like Magma, for example. You're all painting at the same time and bouncing off each other's ideas. I used to do that with a friend of mine. I used to start a drawing and then I'd give it to him and he'd continue drawing on top of it. Or we would create a comic strip. I start the first 2 frames and I give it to him and he would continue the story. The same way, that's a very interesting and very eye-opening thing for me is the fact that we connect without saying words. We didn't share any ideas like this is what should happen next. The story here is about this. No, you just created it. You gave it, and he continued it based on what he was feeling. And then we look at it at the end and it's like, wow, what the hell is this? We just read it. We don't analyze it. One thing, not to veer off too much, but one thing one of my favorite directors said, David Lynch, director of Twin Peaks and Blue Velvet and Eraserhead and many, many brilliant movies. He said someone had asked him to explain the movie, and he said, that's really a funny thing you're asking me to do, because to me the movie is the explaining part. Like, that's all. I don't have. Why should I talk about something that is already created? Now you just watch it. Why do I have to dissect it for you? You're ruining it for yourself in doing that. You're supposed to just take it in. It's a feeling. And then maybe that will inspire you to create something. I feel like that's part of the human mind and evolution that hasn't yet grown to its even more deeper potential. We have yet to explore further into that realm. And there's a lot of things that come into play that stop us from that. Call it responsibilities or jobs or who knows what. But why? Why should that stop us? Why should me having to follow instructions at work for a gig, for a piece even, stop me from thinking in a way that helps me grow as a thinker? And when you're creating paintings, when you're creating work like this, you're thinking more than you are trying to emulate something photographic. You're thinking about what's going to be that what is the viewer going to be taking in? Where is the viewer? Who is the viewer in this piece? That's one of the things that I always ask myself. And why? Sometimes why? Why are we in this position? But for now, in this piece that you're watching being painted, I want the viewer to be a fly. I want the viewer to be something hovering. The viewer is the environment. And I pull that from The Shining. I pull that from Kubrick's Overlook Hotel. Granted, this is an exterior. It's not really an interior. But how do I make it feel like it is that, and it's not just a imitation of a shot? Granted, even if it is an imitation of a shot that I've seen, still good. I think it would still work, because there's nothing wrong with using what's already on this rich palette of cinema. Because if you try to reinvent the wheel, you might run into more insecurity talk. And you might start to struggle, and that could cause you to shut down your own work. You're painting, and then you go, God, this is just, what am I doing with my time? And I should just be focusing on this. Still art, but I should just be focusing on this. Why am I painting? Whatever. And you save it for later, and you probably never see it again. But the point is, in that moment, to realize the importance of sticking to your gut. Because it was that exact moment for me that made me realize that's what caused me to have leaps in my artwork. I stuck to my gut reaction, gut feeling to things that I remembered, stories I've heard, and that's what caused me to paint things fearlessly, regardless what anybody would say, and start putting them up, sharing them. Thankfully, there was a platform to share them on, CG Hub again. This is before its station. In sharing that, getting people's reactions, that was also very important for me. Regardless if it was negative or positive, a reaction is a very valuable thing. If no one pays attention, if people look at your work and they have zero reaction to it, like, cool, that's cool. I take that as somewhat of a compliment, but the reaction is not there. If it's just like, it's cool, man, it's pretty cool, like that's it. I am bothered by that. Like, God, I failed in succeeding to get an emotional punch out of you, man. So again, here it goes, where I come back to myself and I start thinking, where did I go wrong? Maybe it's like in a comedic act, maybe it's the crowd. It's just a bad crowd. But you have to take responsibility for your own material as well. Maybe you kind of suck at your comedy right now too. So in the same sense, I'm just sitting there going, wow, where did I fail? Maybe I held back too much. Maybe I should have pushed this aspect. And you learn from that, and you do it next time, and you do it with a more determined intent of creating this emotional impact through your piece. I'm going to get back to the comments here, the chat. Hello, everybody. Ion, sorry for mispronouncing. Blade Runner warm version. Hello. Hey, Amir. Hey, Zefuko. Zefuko asks, do you ever worry about translating your more abstract marks into literal objects? That's a really cool question. Yes and no. I mean, I worry about it as I kind of like how this object is abstracted, and I don't want to spell it out literally, because you get the gist of it. And so I'm going to leave it like that. But then the person I'm showing it to is like, what is that? What's that block with triangle? Ah, it's a cup. That looks like a block with a triangle. Needs to be a cup. Okay. So I go back in there and I literally paint a cylindrical thing with reflections and so on and so forth. And when I don't worry about it is when I've decided already that I'm going to paint this for what it is, this object, this literal object, but I'm going to paint it in an abstract, simplified, minimalistic way, then that's good. So I guess one is when you stumble on something through a happy accident, much like when we paint with gouache on those small Lana watercolor pads, and your dry brush indicates the foam and the rocks and people in distance and who knows what. And if someone was to ask you, you gotta that to me that just someone who's taking it literal. You know, not bashing on those people. They only know, they can only understand so much. They're different. They're a different non-artistic individuals that we work with on a daily basis. I don't look down on them. In fact, I kind of am grateful for them because they appreciate the art, but a lot of the times they don't understand what's happening in a painting and why it's working for them. So that also creates an interesting challenge for you as to how can I still be free in painting the way I want to paint it and express what I want to express, and for it to come out as clear and as safe as they are used to. Because a lot of the times if they see something that isn't tight, for example, if it's too loose, they get scared from that. They're not sure. But someone who has the vocabulary of an artist, of a painter, of a draftsman, they'll look at it and they'll love it. It's like, this is all it needs to be done. Sometimes you work with directors that have that eye, sometimes you don't. And that's just the way it is. You don't go around educating them because there's a lot of money in stake. And it's the last thing you want to do is kind of play boss to the guy that's hired you and paying you. You kind of just want to adapt to the situation. Anyway, I'm trailing off. I hope that answered your question. And you have another question. I really enjoyed... Oh, you're just saying that's a comment. Thank you, Zafugo. Here you see me in the current painting. Now I've started to add cools to break up. The first thing I did was block in the telephone box as a bluish type of darker turquoise color, and I'm adding different type of hotter colors around it, so it sort of frames it. Now the lights in the background, I'm treating them like billboards and headlights, and squinting always. Alex Oddwood. Hey, man. Alex asks, what would you think if your personal and emotional work got very little reaction, but more generic commercial getting attention? Do you try to find the middle ground? Stick to personal until it works? I try to find the middle ground. That's a great question. What I used to think was, these guys don't know better, and that's ego. It's not good. That won't help you grow. And as a matter of fact, when you end up working with amazing production designers or directors, and if your mindset is still that, you will only come out sounding defensive. They won't like that. I can't work with this guy. He just thinks he is the shit, and he wants his way. However, if you have the luxury and the comfort to just do your thing, and until it's accepted as your thing, that's amazing as well. But I believe even the greatest artists that we know today, our digital godfathers, they went through this type of process of finding a middle ground, doing what they love and accomplishing what the client needs. But I used to just be ignorant to that, and I got chewed out a lot. Here I kind of zoomed in to my painting. I figure you got the gist of the color palette and reference, and for the most part I'll be color picking from the painting itself. So yeah, to answer your question, Alex, I think it's good to find a middle ground, because it creates a even stronger challenge in a way, especially if you want to be you, but the other side is holding you back from it. You will find a road from that. From the clash of that, it will sculpt you into something even stronger. I've heard, however, many stories where people really dislike their jobs in that type of an environment, and it probably is because of other things. It's probably because of how they're treated, or bosses are condescending, or who knows what. But when it comes to art, and you're even hating your art that you're being asked to do, be it you want to be doing environments, but they're just asking you to do props. They don't need environments right now. Well, what is it about your environment that you love to create? What is it? Take that aspect, if it's lighting or the color, and apply it to that prop design. That's what I did, for example. I hope I'm not straying off too far from your question, but I would be asked to not do keyframes for a bit and do props for a movie. So I would take a prop and present it in a way that it felt like it's a shot from a movie. If this was a prop in a shot of a film, how would it look? So I'm still designing the prop, but I'm making it look cinematic. That's one way to find that middle ground, a literal way to find the middle ground. But I guess there's probably more challenging, more psychological things about that answer and question that, again, it boils down to asking yourself where you came from. what has been your journey so far? Are you, you know, who are you? How strong are you? And it's not a competitive thing. It's not a thing to sit there and you go, am I good enough for this moment? No, no. What I'm saying is you are valuing yourself. You are assessing what you have become after all this time, and you are sitting down and letting the current state of drama in your mind be just noise, and you shut it off and you move forward through your task. It's not just a paycheck. This is a unique industry. It's a unique art form. Never let it just be a paycheck in your mind. That's one of the worst things you could do to yourself. Why would you ever do that? Just a paycheck. How do you grow from that? It's just a paycheck. But on Netflix, and I'm just watching while I do my work. Like, what are you doing? How is that going to propel you forward? Might as well pause your work and start playing a video game. Not that there's anything wrong with playing video games, but you're not going to improve anyway. Always try to push yourself, no matter how many headaches or sleepless nights you have. The outcome at the end is so rewarding. It's so valuable and powerful. You grow from that tremendously. You find your voice to an even more fine-tuned state. You used to sing the tone one way. In the future, you'll sing it exquisitely, perfectly, and even through different instruments, through different ways. So, yeah, I mean, I guess on the subject of insecurity, that has a lot to do with it. Hopefully it's all making sense to you guys. I know I'm preaching here and ranting, but it's kind of what when we're in the office, when we were in the office, we would have conversations like this almost on a daily basis, and it starts from a point of, man, how do you make a painting like this and that? How do you let go? I keep forgetting to do this. I keep forgetting to just let my marks be, and I start to noodle. I stop thinking. I keep getting distracted by this. Or, I was watching this YouTube and I went on a spiral down, and now I haven't gotten any work done, and blah, blah, blah. And that forks into different topics of talking about art. This stuff, what I'm doing right now, it's only that, and it's only going to be that for the next hour or so. So if you guys have any questions, and for those who have joined just now or a moment ago, thank you for joining. Just to give you a frame of reference, this is a demo being played back in real time while I'm talking. I'm not actually painting this, as it would be quite impossible to do that and speak at the same time for myself. I would have to be quiet. And it's based off a track I had made, this painting, which I will play towards the end as a tone, as a mood filler to show you where it came from. Christina Kim, hey, how's it going? Thank you for being here. Christina asks, do you do mentorship or online courses? I have not thought about mentorship. I used to do online courses. with Concept Design Academy, and perhaps in the future I will do so again, but currently I have sort of stepped back from that because work is a bit too much for me to stray away or to relax a bit and be able to teach anything else. In other words, I love work too much to sacrifice it and break my attention away. And I also love my free time that I get through the weekends to be able to sacrifice that and teach. Although teaching is only 3 hours, the classes are usually just 3 hours. But anyway, I feel like I need some time for myself to sort of reset. I haven't been teaching that long compared to other brilliant mentors that are out there, but still learning. So yeah, maybe in the future, Christina, I'll get back into that, and of course, all of you will be notified if you follow me on Instagram. And through this painting, I'm kind of right now. I'm starting to think about what are some of these shapes, and how can I make them feel like forms. So you've started seeing how I'm starting to pick away at certain shapes and define edges a little, but this isn't a final thing. It's just indication. Alex Oddwood asks, how do you think about and paint various materials without over-rendering and making it work with all the atmosphere and crap going on in a cinematic shot? That's a really cool question. I think about the light, the amount of light it has. I think about its temperature, the color, and then finally at the very end, I think about its reflectivity or specularity, or I don't isolate. When I'm painting things, even if they have different surfaces, I group them into masses first, and the nuances in color next, the desaturated or saturated aspects. So I let a lot of things be gray for a bit, and then maybe certain surfaces that are more reflective could be more saturated, for example. Who knows? But I always try to think grouped. Martin Rivero asks, do you listen to music while working and painting to keep the mood of the piece? Yes, and since I made a track behind this piece, I was kind of unhealthily looping it because it's not baked. The track is not rendered. What you heard in the beginning of the stream was literally me playing it live from the music composing program. So that was me mixing it live for you guys. So I would do that. I would take one aspect of it and like this, for example, and I would just let this tone guide my mind. If there's something about that that's getting me to the place that I need to be at, I'll use that. So, yeah. Eon asks, Alexander, if you would give a fellow artist a homework to do it on a daily, weekly basis, what would that be? That's a good question. I think a lot of my homework consisted at one point of doing film studies. For the reasons being that you can learn a lot from cinematography in terms of composition, lighting, color, especially if you want to head into this area of expertise, into keyframe art. It was film studies. That was one thing that I always recommended to the class I used to teach is do 10 or however many more you want, or less, however many you can fit, do film studies. I want to see you practicing that, getting excited about that. You kind of have to be excited about good films, good movies. I feel like that's my personal opinion, though. You kind of have to be excited about that to be able to produce good quality cinematic work. Otherwise, how do you teach yourself that? Where would it come from? You have to have seen at least one or two movies that changed your mind about movies. We're so saturated nowadays with social media and who knows whatever people are watching, that I feel like we've forgotten what a powerful film can do to your mind and heart. When you're done watching a really just shattering movie, how do you that can inspire you for years. It certainly has done that to me. And I'm not that freaking special. I'm not that unique. Come on, guys. I think anybody could find their element that motivates them, and it help. You stick to it and you push with that forward. So yeah, film studies, and in the hopes that you will find something in the movie that resonates with you, and I mean that very seriously, not just as a light piece of advice. I took this very seriously because there was a point where I thought I'm not going to get work. And I hit a rock bottom in my mind. Like I'm screwed. I can't find out how to be good in this industry. I feel like they're looking at my work and I'm slacking off and doing all these things wrong. What am I going to do? It's jaw-clenchingly painful where you're just sitting there and watching others already establishing their path, and you're sitting there going, what am I doing with my time? So it pushed me out of that darkness. I something came because I kept on trying. I stuck to it, no matter how painful the feeling, the sadness was. I didn't give in. I let that in a way, Michael Jordan has something similar. He uses his anger. He used his anger to play amazingly. I'm not a Michael Jordan, but like in a similar way, you're kind of letting that feeling be, and it's not really about I'll show them, but it's more about how do I make them look at a piece and not look away. And you know what? I got that from Kubrick. And it's more or less Spielberg talking about Kubrick. He said any one of Kubrick's films has a fail-safe. Like you can't, once you start watching it, you cannot turn it off. You can't look away. Granted, for some people, it's probably the movies are boring and this and that, but
excuse my French, but I don't think you know what you're talking about.
So no, they're not boring. They're very sophisticated films, and it's not really that they're boring. It's probably that in all fairness, when you grow older, you will appreciate him more. At least that's what I thought. I watched 2001: Space Odyssey, And I was like, what the hell am I watching? Ugh. When I was young, when I was older, I watched it again. I was like, this is probably the best sci-fi film I've ever seen. How could anybody think this is boring? It's actually so intense, and it's so profound, and it speaks and relates to our day to day tremendously. Same thing with all of his other films. I watched The Shining when I was too young, and I had feverish nightmares, and I didn't know why, and I was like, that's kind of weird. When I watch it now, I see it more than just a horror film. You know, I see it as a family falling apart, all these more adult things, and I appreciate it and value that so much that I can have the ability to make those distinctions and not just stick to one decision that I once had made or influenced by somebody else. Oh, dude, don't watch that movie. It's garbage. You should watch Fast and the Furious because okay. I'm so glad I don't have that. So, yeah, I sorry. I really trailed off on that answer. Let me get back here. Thank you, Ayan, for asking that. Sai Sankar asks, how do you let go of expectations of getting a callback after giving your all in delivering art tests? Wow. That's a great question. I don't know how many times I've done an art test. Probably once or twice. You know, art tests, not to diverge from your question, but art tests always made me feel a little scared because I had the thought in my head that sometimes art tests are just used to take your work. I mean, what's to stop them? You just did a piece for them, and now they're just going to use it and not call you back. Like, that's what I used to think. I used to ask to get my test paid. Like, can you pay me for the time I'm about to do for you? Can you pay me anything, something small? Because otherwise I'm not going to do it. That's what I used to do. However, if it's a company that's very reputable, if you're going to Valve and they give you an art test, do it without skipping a beat. Because Valve is Valve, and they uphold a good reputation, at least in my mind. I've never worked with them, but I know people that have, and they speak highly of them. Valve is amazing. I don't work in games that often, but, you know, that's just an example. If I don't know if Marvel gives tests. I'm not aware of that. I don't know how the hiring process completely goes. I think they literally look for people that meet the criteria and the standards, the skill level to be able to hire them. But I imagine if Disney, let's say, gave you a test or Marvel gave you a test, it's for the simple, I could safely say that it's for the simple idea to see if you can follow directions and whatnot. And at that point, if you know in yourself that you've done it well, you just kind of move on. You're like, okay, I did that. Hopefully I get something out of it. Now, if you don't get the proper answer in return, you did a test and they come back with like, well, you didn't make the marks like this a C curve. You were treating it as S curve. We need someone to, and it's nitpicky or not nitpicky. You don't take that personally. Honestly, it's what they want. And if you gear yourself around a company, a corporation, if you're basing yourself, your personality, and your art around what they want, then, I guess work harder to be that. Otherwise, remember that you have your own voice that you have yet to develop. You are a tiny, blossoming thing on this planet Earth, and you have yet to go deeper into your mind and feeling and develop, hone these skills. I myself am still doing that to this very day. I discover something new about myself in my art, and I'm still searching. I feel like I'm like, God, there's more to this. There's more to this. There's always that. Always that. So, in terms of tests, you kind of you do it and you move on. You don't think about it. So I hope that answers your question. Or the company. It's just it's just a experience as a financial. It's not the applicant's fault. Whatever happens, it's generally not the applicant's fault. Thanks for asking that. Eon asks, assuming that fellow artist wants to create moody, emotional, and thought-provoking paintings. Oh, that's not a question. I thought that was getting into a question. Sorry. Yeah, exactly. Of course, Alex Oddwood asks, speaking of shattering movies, have you seen Come and See by Elim Klimov? Yes, I have. I have seen Come and See, and that's one film that changed the way I feel about films, for sure. Yes, I highly recommend it. It's not for the how do you say it? The weak stomach. It's not a gory film, but it's definitely an intense film. Please watch it if you are really into seeing things that will alter your feelings and tone, and you love doing that. If you love watching movies that make you feel scared or sad or extremely happy, I've seen films that make me extremely happy. One of them being Flight of the Navigator, another one being Neverending Story, and that's when I was young. And recently, I watched a classic film. It was about it's about a bike race. It's such a feel-good movie. I forgot the name, but I will dig it up. Maybe share it on Instagram one of these days. Such a good film. So just for a moment, just to come back here to the painting, you see me going in with small brushes and sort of scratching in painting strokes, kind of like pencil sketch type of strokes, into the more blocked in big mass mark making. I do that because it creates, in the end, that will create a sense of noise. This is my first time saving the piece, I think. There you go. Get to the phone. That's my Arnold right there. Sorry. Get to the phone. Come on. Ugh, that doesn't sound like Arnold at all. So yeah. So in doing that, I'm kind of motivating myself to sort of uh, not use too many effects. And also when you color pick with a mixer brush off of that, you start to paint with a type of breakup. Your brushstroke itself has a nuanced feel. I think that's a right there. That mark making right there is a mixer brush. It creates a really interesting edge that otherwise would be almost nearly impossible to paint. It would take a much higher fidelity of a canvas, for example, in resolution. And a lot of these marks that I'm making right now, some of them I'm thinking about, and a lot of them I'm not. I'm just going off of the feeling. Like that little circle I made into that green square shape. It was an instinctual thought of trying to get something to have a breakup. I don't want anything to look too flat, too simple, especially in a real like cinematic way. I don't want things to come off looking empty. Something always has to, even on a very subtle level, be happening. I don't know what I'm doing behind his head. I'm trying to create something back there, and I don't know what it is. I think originally I was thinking it's like piled up garbage or something, and now I'm thinking, what if I need to paint the rest? Like, what is he wearing on his head? And his forehead is gigantic. So I think I'm gonna eventually change that. Hey, Christina, no problem. Let me read your question. Christina asks, not sure if that question was already asked before, but how many references and studies am I going through to create one artwork? Many, tons of references. I'm flipping through images and saving stuff on Instagram and on my hard drive constantly. Sometimes I'm just sitting on the couch and I'm on my phone on Instagram looking at things that essentially capture my mind. So that's also another thing that's good to do. If I'm not watching a movie or listening to an inspirational podcast or music, I'm looking intensely through Instagram, or I'm out with my lady and we are looking at nature, hiking, whatever, taking shots myself. I like to do that as well. You take your own reference, not for texture, not just for, oh wow, this angle right here, the way the sun is hitting that tree, that's pretty cool. Maybe I could use that one day for lighting reference. I mean, to be honest, I actually end up using a lot of that for lighting reference through my professional work. And it doesn't stay like that. The piece itself alters and changes, but at least it was a starting point. You know, that alone is an interesting subject because I always ask myself, like, how, why do I not follow through with the reference I chose? I kind of lost it originally. The image I sort of let it be the beginning grounds, and then I lost it. Why do I not follow through? Why do I not stay with that? I used to think that is a waste and whatnot, but that in itself is a very interesting part of an artist's process that should always be fresh, and we should always be aware of that. I feel like in order to remain happily excited and thrilled and entertained by our own work. That's just one part of it, I feel like. I think the more you limit yourself to your tool sets and your process, probably the worse it gets. But that's not to say that if you think minimalistic, if you are approaching a painting in a minimalistic way, I think that's a good thing. I think maybe just using one brush for an entire painting can help you out. Or using a limited palette for an entire painting could help you out. But using a variety of references is very helpful. Using very little reference makes things very challenging. For the simple fact that we pull a lot from life. We base a lot of these works of art we create things to make them relate for our audience. You don't not want to do that. It's I mean, you could show someone something way out of this world, but I feel like if you're going to engage your audience with your work, there has to be something in there that makes them remember something, makes them think about something. So that's the relationship with your art and your audience. So you're always pulling from life, I feel like. Alex, you missed my mixer brush. I always use it. I have sort of balanced it out from using it entirely with mixer brush, and now I'm just kind of doing both. I mean, I'm sure I'll go back into it here and there, but I don't know. I guess I'm going through a phase probably where I'm just using default for a while and using mixer here and there for certain edges, certain moments of textural application, and if I don't know how to, if I want to just indicate a feeling of something, I'll use a mixer brush because it'll create a randomness that otherwise a default brush maybe won't, unless I have color dynamics on or something. Hey, Jamie. Jamie says, "Hey Alex, you once said Akira Kurosawa was a goldmine for keyframe artists to study. Could you explain a bit more about what I mean?" Well, his films have beautiful compositions, and the compositions, the cinematography in his films tells story without the need of dialogue. That's pretty much what I mean. You can look at a shot, you can pause a frame from Kurosawa, and you see its intent, you see its simplistic, what it's trying to get at. Now, you watch an entire film to learn how to evoke the mood and feeling. You pause a frame, you study it for its composition and light and all that. But first you watch the movie entirely before you start studying the frames individually, because then you get the feeling, the mood. Then you have something to reference back to when you're pausing a frame, and now you know that the story is about a murder told through 3 different point of views or 4 different point of views. Rashomon, right? So now you're paying attention to how the composition is foreshadowing certain things. So I think he does that masterfully on a subtle level and on a very very explicit level too, like very, very powerful, in your face, but still subtle. I feel like he's quite subtle, quite natural and dreamlike, even very dreamlike. Hey, Andre. Thank you about the Falcon and Winter Soldier comment. That show is pretty fun. Yeah, that was a fun show to work on. Anthony and I did work on that, and I have to catch up. I think I'm 1 episode behind. There's a lot that Marvel's going to be releasing, and it's exciting just to think about it. But I wish I could talk about it, but I can't. And it's not so much that it's under contract. I mean, that is the reason why I can't talk about it. But I don't want to be Mr. Corporate here, but it would be spoiling a lot. Mainly the reason why I don't like to spoil things, even though well, no, I didn't spoil anything from Kurosawa's films, so never mind. Yeah, I don't like to spoil films for people. It's one of the worst feelings I can have, is telling someone, Vader was his uncle. Even now, I'm not trying to spoil that Vader is his not uncle. You know what I'm saying, right? Right, everybody? It's not uncle, it's father. Oh, what did I do that for? Anyway. I'm being a nut. Ixie92X, do you have a favorite book on cinematography or visual storytelling? Do I? I think I do. Book on cinematography or visual storytelling. It's not a book on how to, I think. It's more about an artist that uses that language in a very successful way. I'm going to write that down, and then in the comments section, when this is all over, I'm going to post those references, because I have to rethink that. I do have some favorites, yes. But off the top of my head, I cannot name them. Thank you for asking that, though. I will put that out there. Alex, am I going to be able to show some of the work soon on Falcon, you mean? Falcon Winter Soldier? I guess, but we generally have to wait until we have the art of out. But maybe I'll be able to show one piece. But personally, I would much rather wait. I don't mind waiting for as long as it needs to be. However, I will be releasing a lot of personal pieces pretty soon, so that's something I'm excited about. But yeah, for Falcon, Winter Soldier, we have to wait for the art of. Andre, Andy Park told on David Finch podcast he's working on 4 projects in a row. Is it usual for a whole team? I'll understand if you can answer. If you can't answer that, yeah, that's kind of how it is. Sometimes we are placed just on one, considering that how intense or how much it needs to, the focus needs to be on this one project. But usually we're divided by on 1 or 2. When there's a lot of people hired, each artist probably just has like 1 or 2 projects, at most 3. The supervisors usually are on a lot more. Ryan, for example, Ryan Meinerding and Andy Park are working on a lot, and it's just too much. I don't understand how they do that. It's a lot of gear switching. So hats off to them. Um, I was once on 3 projects, I believe. Was Hawkeye, Eternals, Loki, Falcon, Winter Soldier. That's more than 3. I just realized. So I guess it's possible. Yeah, I forgot that I was once doing that many. And I gotta say, I really like not doing that many. Oof. Oh man. Yeah, that's a lot of work. And it is kind of usual. Yes. Ooh. Gabriel, The Filmmaker's Eye by Gustavo Mercado, or Mersado, sorry if I said that wrong, is a great book. I will check that out. Thank you, Gabriel. So, do any of you guys have any questions or experiences? Before I say that, I'm gonna try for future times to make it possible to be able to stream this and do voice chat with you all. That way, the communication can be a bit more fluid. Because I realize right now things are on a delay between me reading your comments and answering them. It's kind of coming at a probably 5 to 10 second delay, maybe. But I was going to say, if anybody here has anything they'd like to share and ask or talk about, please do so. And maybe I could offer some type of story in return or advice. But I'm right now with the painting, I'm still going in and sort of, I spend a long time on my lights and darks and my shapes. I'm trying to get something a lot more concrete in terms of shape design. And by concrete, I mean like something that has a clear representation of a shape as opposed to something fuzzy. So like a triangle looking more like a triangular shape, and or whatever the shape is, as opposed to something that's kind of broken apart in its brush stroke textural nature. I think I'm starting to think about the figures that are in the painting and their planes, their nuances. So they're not just stylistic silhouettes. Hey, Alex. Don't know if I told you in previous streams, but I got a keyframe artist job at Warner Brothers after following your class. Having a lot more fun than on concept art. So big thanks. Oh, I'm very glad you got that. That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that with us. That's really cool, Alex. I'm glad you're enjoying the keyframe art. Nabs, you're welcome. It's a pleasure. I will continue sharing stories. I'm just kind of giving a moment if anybody wants to ask, and I wanted to talk more about my growth process and getting through hard times and persevering through challenges and just elements that are probably common but no one talks about. Christina asks, can you tell a little bit more story behind this art? Seems like this guy's getting yelled at by this woman. Well, about that, the reason why I have a person having a conversation right in the foreground is because I want to create sound in the viewer's mind. I've been thinking about that more often. Is if you can look at a painting and you can hear the painting. The story behind this piece is something about the phone. It's probably one of the most out of place things to me is that phone. It feels like maybe it shouldn't be there, or perhaps it's. I mean, the reason why I centered it is perhaps it's out of it's out of business, as they say, and maybe it's about to ring, or I just wanted to create a sense of tension around something that is forgotten. It's old. Phone booths are not really an intact thing anymore. Maybe in parts of the world they are still, where you put in coins, but I feel like everybody's using cell phones. I feel like they're looked at as a classic, archaic 80s, 90s thing. I mean, I stand corrected, probably. I'm probably wrong, but it's the feeling I get from it. So the story behind these two is nothing specific aside from creating. It's the same thing as creating atmosphere through your work. You're creating life, people. It's a normal thing that maybe you would see. Whether she's explaining something to him, like I told you how many times? Look at the back of my hand. And he's like, okay. But the idea is that we are slowly pushing into the phone handle. Someone is about to walk into frame and pick up that phone. That's what was going through my head. I want to make it feel like we're about to get introduced to a character we've never seen before. And the people around and these two having a conversation, this is the world this character is in. And the music, I mean, that came from the music, really. What type of movie is this? I'm trying to direct this in my head already as I'm painting it. What type of, is this an action, thriller, crime, drama? What is this? I feel like it's probably a thriller. I feel like it's probably crime drama. Could be a comedy, but dark comedy. But I'm leaning more towards thriller. Thriller crime. It's just so fitting. Or maybe it's a dream. It's a dream sequence. Alex, I am using FL Studio. I'm using FL Studio Pro to make music. I've been using that program since high school, since the very first days of FL Studio. It's kind of insane. I've tried other programs as well, of course, but I always come back to this one. Cinnamon asks, during a painting process, do you have some visual anchor point in your mind which you try to keep through the whole process? For example, space between couples on the first plan. I guess I would think about something like that. I was just trying when I'm initially creating the pieces. I'm trying to create a naturalistic gesture to the whole piece, to the entire drawing. It's more about the rhythm. The anchor point, yes. I mean, my anchor point is the vertical square shape in the midst of like figures, people, shapes that we relate with, and then suddenly there's a thing, and it's almost like a door, even. So I kind of think about that, yeah, but very loosely. Hey, Sean. That's a great question, Simon. Alex, it's really crazy how you made the focal point the phone, but managed to have all the lights and noise on the left away from the focal point. Yeah, that's a thing that I always really love in film is when when you have moments that feel so real, so natural, like it's a very honest, candid depiction, but you're still locked in on something you're supposed to be looking at. And the easiest way I could do that is by putting my focal point pretty close to center frame, and on top of that, it's framed within a frame. I mean, if you look at the phone booth itself, it's a square, it's a blocky shape, and then there's more blocky shapes inside, and then the phone handle is round and shiny, and has a specific type of contrast and reflectivity. But believe it or not, this is still kind of like in its early stage in the painting. Things are going to change. I know for a fact that I'm going to remove things to accentuate that. Thank you, Sean. Yeah, guys, Sean Sevestri is an amazing artist as well. Friend of mine. You guys should check out his art. Really, really freaking beast work. Very inspirational as well. Thanks for stopping by, man. I really appreciate it. This also is inspired by a film by oh my god, what's his name? Orson Welles, Touch of Evil, and the way Touch of Evil opens with the camera drifting around and following a car with the bomb. It has that feeling, especially with the soundscape in the distance and then coming near. I feel like that it was also in the back of my head. Sean, thoughts on Robert Yeoman and Wes Anderson cinematography? I have to remind myself who Robert Yeoman is. I probably know what you're talking about, but I don't know that name. Wes Anderson cinematography is very beautiful, and that's a very boring answer to. I mean, what can I say? The guy thinks about. The guy thinks about his films like a children's book illustration, and he manages to execute it in that way. Wes Anderson, it's so beautiful. I don't see anybody who's done that. Interestingly enough, though, Rushmore and Bottle Rocket do not feel like that. I personally love Bottle Rocket and Rushmore a lot more than any of his films after that. I mean, Royal Tenenbaums is amazing, but it's incredible how much more it has become his voice, the way his films look like now. Sometimes it is so vividly loud that it pulls me out. But that's not a bad thing, because in any moment through his films, it's always beautiful. And there's always these story points where you're like, oh man, that was bittersweet, or oh, that was kind of sad, or whatever. It sticks with you. Whereas Rushmore, I didn't think about his cinematography. I felt it. And Bottle Rocket just doesn't. Bottle Rocket doesn't even. I mean, it has cinematography, but it's more about the friendship, and it gets that across. Oh, that's his cinematographer. Oh, okay. I thought you meant two different people. Yeah, check those out. Rushmore and Bottle Rocket are Rushmore. I think you'll love Rushmore. It's a great film. So, um, where was I? I was talking about insecurities and growth. I was talking about feeling like a fraud as I was moving up as an artist through the industry, and I remember when I started working at Aaron Sims. I That was my first film job, and it was thanks to a friend of mine, Jared Morantz, and he recommended me to go to do storyboards there for Aaron, and I did boards. I sat down in one day. I did about 80 frames or so of this commercial for an Indian reservation or something. I forgot what it was for, but I did it all on sticky notes with pencil and marker, and that was because I was inspired by Desprez. Forgot his full name, but the board artist on Gladiator. He didn't do it on sticky notes, but when I was at Spark Unlimited, I had to lucky opportunity to work and learn from to work with and learn from Bill Perkins, who's also one of my painting mentors from my younger artist life. And he showed us how he does his storyboards, and he literally takes horizontal sticky notes that are very close to a standard aspect ratio for film, and he just does each frame by frame like that and puts it up on a board. He just literally sticks it and moves them around if he needs to. They were kind of like index cards, actually, more than sticky notes. I did the sticky note thing myself, but anyway. So I did that at Aaron's, and I've told this story before, where after that I asked, well, so are you gonna am I coming back next week? And Aaron was like, well, we don't necessarily have storyboard work that often, so I mean, sorry to say, but if something does come up in the future, we'll get back to you. This is more of a visual effects, yada yada, so on. And I felt pretty down because of that, and I went home and I thought to myself, I can't let this pass me by. I can do what they were doing, and I did the zombie piece, and in Photoshop I photo bashed it, and I worked until like 2-3 in the morning, and then I emailed it at an appropriate time where it seemed like I was obsessed about it. It wasn't like I'm putting up an act, but I was obsessed about it. I'm like, I want to continue working in film. This is my calling. I had realized it when I did the boards, and it's like, this is it. And looking at the work around on Aaron's walls, and I met other artists there who are friends of mine now. Joel Chang, Tim Min, Paul Christopher was there at the time when I did the boards, and I had such a sad feeling in me that I wanted to break down and cry. I'm like, I can't. Otherwise, I'm back to where I was. I can't let this slip. So I did a piece, and I sent it in an email, and I said I was really inspired by what you guys do, and I just want to say thank you for using me. Here's a piece to honor you guys using me. Really appreciate it. I'll remember it. And because of that piece, that zombie face, I have it on an old hard drive. I should probably pull it up one of these days. He called me back in. Literally the next week I was back in getting paid however much I was getting paid, but it was a starting rate. And I was on freaking cloud nine. I'm like, I did it! Like... At that point, I was just like, I knew it. I knew I could do it. I'm strong enough to do it. Yeah. I was screaming in my car, driving to work. I'm laughing at this because back then, when I think about it, I'm like, man, if I was to offer advice to anybody, when something like this happens and you're so excited, feel excited, be happy about it, but calm down, because it ends up hurting you even more when it turns on you out of nowhere in a month or so. Like, you're feeling all happy and screaming in the car and singing shitty music that's on the radio, and then you're like, a month later, it's like, oh, we ran out of budget. You're like, whoa. No, what's a budget? Anyway, so I started working at Aaron's, and things started to ramp up. And I realized what it took, the quality, the dynamics of the work, just the dynamic of the space took a lot. It took a lot to do what was required. And my insecurities kicked in. I'm like, I'm not good enough. Oh my God, what am I doing? And what that did to me is it made me go through different states of mind in producing work, different types of styles. Like, oh, maybe I should do photo bashing. And I kid you not, Aaron would come by on a daily basis because I was getting paid cheap. He let me sort of learn while working, and they would give me, rightfully so, they would give me scrap work, like just do a series of infected rats for Green Lantern, whatever it was on. Okay, I took rats and I painted a rat, and then it's infected and it's decaying. Aaron would walk by and he'd be like, why don't you just use a photo of a rat and then work on top of that? Like, oh, but the painting. Old school hindering mentality. Oh, the painting. It's more pure. And he's like, that's silly. Please use a photo. Like, okay. I use a photo and I lower the opacity so it's barely any photo, and I continue painting. It's like, I told you to use a photo. Like, yeah, okay. Man, did I have a ego. I did it to the point where it almost hurt me, but I was like, Alex, we look at this piece and then look at yours. We need this. We need photo. The clients want that. They don't respond to these paint. I started to learn like that. More about the business of things. More about when someone tells you to do something 5 times, you should have done it yesterday the way they told you to do it the second time. Let alone you should have done it when they told you to do it the first time. So, the insecurity of that, when I'm working now with photos already, skip ahead a little bit, and I'm seeing other guys creating incredible work. When the boss walks around and he's like, oh, that's great. Oh, that's amazing. That's what they want. That's what they want. That's the live commentary I'm hearing being given to someone else. And the room is pretty small, so you hear everything. That's what they want. That's what you want. You can't but help look at your own work in that moment and go, whoa, I'm not getting this feedback. I haven't gotten it for a month. What am I doing wrong? Shit. Am I gonna get cut? He's gonna replace me. When I think back on that, the only valuable thing I got out of that is that it pushed me to get better. It pushed me to be more aware. It pushed me to leave my ego at the door in front of my house before I left to work. And then I go to work with an open mind to learn processes, to learn different ways of working. Granted, being a little bit hypocritical here, I still haven't touched 3D, and I've been told so many times. However, the thing with that is, because I improved to an extreme plane,
An extreme plane of existence.
to an extreme way with my painting, I figured I don't actually think I need 3D at this point anymore. Oh, just really quickly, here I'm cropping in. I literally created a larger res version of this crop in. I'm going in and I'm painting on into more high fidelity version, and later I just snap that back into the painting. You'll see it. Anyway, so what ends up happening is I hear Aaron making that commentary, and I start to doubt myself. I start to think I'm not doing good. But the only thing that is good out of that is that it forces you to accept what they're offering, what they want out of you. And that's a good thing. Honestly, learning on the job like that is a gift. you don't want to let that pass by. Insecurities are not necessarily a bad thing all the time. I would say generally they are a mind block, like I said earlier. But in this case, it made me aware because otherwise no one else is going to tell you this. No one else sitting next to you is going to lean over and go, dude, get with it. Start doing this. Get with it. You have the potential. Get with no one. You come through it in a very bitter, sour way. You come through it, at least I did. I came to it, in a self-deprecating way. You stink. What are you doing? They're not responding to your work. Ugh, all that. And it forced me to get to where I need to be for Aaron's standards, and then beyond that. And that's part of the growth. And then one day, when I was comfortable enough, I presented a piece in a form of a shot. Didn't even think about cinematography. I was just thinking, what if it looked like a moment out of a movie? Like I was the only one who created it. What if I was the first one, my ego again. I was the first one who ever thought of this. No one else had ever thought about that. Yeah, what's Star Wars? Who's McCurry? I was so in a cave in my head, it's unbelievable. Anyway, so I presented that, and Aaron's like, yeah, that's good. Why don't we try that again? Let's do it on this. Let's do it on this horror film. Indie horror films would come by Aaron's, and I would do frames that would sell to pitch it. And that's how my spark lit up, because I realized I've always loved this type of stuff. I've always loved cinematic looking stuff, frames, because even in high school with friends of mine, we would gather and we would make short movies using Hi8 camcorders, Sony camcorder. I even went out of my way to buy a Canon adapter that you can screw on a Sony it was a Canon camcorder, and we screwed on a Sony wide-angle lens. Like, I remember being so proud of that. Like I'm already proud. Like I'm already pro in high school. So we would do that. So that came back as a memory. I'm like, I've always had this. I knew it. Maybe this is it. This is where I start. This is where I put my footprint in. Aaron's going to love this. I can do this. I felt so confident. And one day, in my journey ahead, now I feel like a big shot. CG Hub comes around. Who's Mache? Mache Kujara? Mache. Who's Mache. Whatever. Just one guy. There's plenty of them out there. Plenty of amazing artists. It took Mache. I don't know him as a close friend, but I have met him. He's a really nice guy. I saw one of his The Last of Us concepts, and it looked like a shot from a movie, just shot from something cinematic. I flipped. I'm like, what? I thought I was the only guy. Woo. Anyway, so I backtracked, and I feel like at that moment I started to become a bit more humble. It humbled me to see other artists. I started to realize that someone I had already been looking at and being inspired by, like Craig Mullins, had already been doing that. I was oblivious to it. I was so into my own head. I don't know how much this has to do with insecurities, but I feel like it led to that. You blind yourself, I guess. You blind yourself with all these things, this self-talk, Am I good enough? And doubt that you forget to look at the big picture for a while. I did. I don't know. Hopefully you guys don't. But that's just my experience. I blinded myself for a long time, and it hits you like a sledgehammer when you realize you're kind of off course. However, it trains your gut feeling. It trains your gut reaction. And I remember Chris Rock telling a fellow comedian friend, I think it was Louis C.K., talking about, it was actually Louis C.K. talking about how he learned from Chris Rock on reading people, reading jobs. Like, the more mileage, the more encounters, the more failures you have. It's not a failure. A failure is more like a sign of improvement and success. If you failed, that means you're now moving forward. That's what he said to Louis. And you also learn how to read people a mile away. That this guy pattern is going to screw you over. Don't work with him. You know it already. You don't need to be rude to them. Just keep an eye out, move away. So in the same sense, it opened my mind, like I have to be more aware. I have to be more self-aware. And at that moment, I feel like it was that exact moment where I started to not listen to my self-doubts in a negative, hindering way. I still have my self-doubts, but it pushes me into a positive light. Maybe it's a dark light, but it's positive. It may be something deep and mysterious, but it is for the good of the art. It's always about respecting the art.
Respect the chemistry, Jesse.
So that was part of my big growth process. And after Aaron's, because of that, I started to pick up other small freelance work. I've worked with Aaron for about 2-3 years, and then I left, and I wanted to branch out and grow because it was a recommendation given to me. It's like, dude, you got to get out of there. It's good for you as an artist. You have to grow. I think the recommendation was given to me by Joel. You know, if you want to do more with your stuff, you have to try other places. And that's what I did. And to this very day, even at Marvel, if I am in a meeting and we get our feedback, and let's say my work has no feedback at all, but everybody else's has feedback, I look at it in a different light. Let's say Billy, he did a piece that made Kevin Feige freaking amazed. Like, this guy is the next Rembrandt. You know, that's the comment Billy got. And no one else got anything. I take consideration that this is the taste they like. I wield that. I use that. As opposed to, why not me? How come they didn't like mine? I must really suck. No. Learn from your team. That's also something that I started to learn when I was young. Is young in the industry, that is you start to learn how to listen to the guys that are paying you, the guys that are making the big decisions. They're not going to tell you directly sometimes. They'll just react to something else, even if it's a small reaction. Just like, yeah, that's cool. All right, there's something there. When you're working for people like that, you know, you can't. It's very easy to start complaining and be like, oh, they said nothing. It gave us nothing. But actually, I still feel like they give you a lot. And there's a lot of insecurity that comes to that. You start questioning your ability. You start questioning, are they going to cancel the show? Maybe they're not interested in it. Are we all failing? All that stuff. So let me just look over the chat. I feel like I've been ranting. What did I miss? I told you many times. Alex asks, don't know if I'm okay talking about this, but what is the starting rate down in LA? Well, I don't know. Starting rate in LA is, I don't know. I honestly don't know. I'm sorry. I would misguide you if I said something. I feel like I've been freelance for such a long time. I forgot what the wages for full-time staff. I haven't been staff since forever. I am not staff at Marvel. I'm kind of full-time freelance, and that you make on your own. You kind of assess on your own, and you put value on your work, and hopefully you're being realistic and fair, because people who have worked in this industry will know when you're just being greedy. Oliver, thoughts on NFT? No thoughts. And will NFT hype last? Not sure. Sorry, Oliver. Yeah, I'm not. I haven't been really diving into NFT. I see a lot of toxicity around it, and it's not. That's not the reason why I'm avoiding it. I just kind of. I don't know what's going on. So here you see me on the cropped in version, more fidelity, just higher resolution of that, the side of that painting with the cars, and I'm chiseling out shapes with a little bit more precision, but not too much. Still treating even the smallest detail on an indicated level, and I'm constantly switching back from mixer and regular brush. And the way I do that, I just hit B twice. I hit B once, and then when I hit B again, it just automatically goes to mixer. It's nice. It's very easy. Where was I? I think that's kind of the sum of what I was trying to say with insecurities, really. And growing with them. The perseverance is seeing your work come out at the end of all of that. Is seeing your own personal growth from that. And I understand sometimes we don't have time to create personal work, but you know, it's very important to make that happen. It's very important for your own body of work to grow. Hossam asks what the most important thing a third world artist should have, artistically or personally, to fit in the global movie industry. I don't know what a third world artist is. However, an artist is an artist to me. You express ideas. You whether you live in beat up war torn country or in Dubai and you're on top of the world. You're someone who wants to share your mind and your soul and your heart with the world. In terms of the film industry, you have a platform like CG, like ArtStation, that you could share your work with the entire world, and a lot of people look at that site. Always be updating, always be posting. Don't fall behind, even if it's at a slower pace. Always be updating. Advice for an artist, for the film industry, the way you worded it, I would say just always push, no matter what the circumstances. Always push towards the direction you want to go, and you'll get there. I feel like that always happens, and it's not an exaggeration. I've seen that happen for everybody who has tried that, and not because of my advice. It's just a thing, like you just pick that direction, set sail, and you will get there. It's a personal discovery. The most beautiful part about this art form is it's a personal growth, a personal discovery. You learn on your own, let alone using methods taught by teachers and whoever, or whatever. So it's not like you have to be qualified to a certain degree to work at Tesla or SpaceX. In this case, you have to discover yourself, and that sounds daunting. That sounds difficult, but it's actually most freeing. It's the most it's possible for anybody. If they want it, if they feel it, if they love it. You have to be crazy about it. You have to really, really love it. You can go about it and just try and kind of be there in your mind with it, but you have to love what you want to do in this film industry, and you'll get there you won't even count the days. You'll get there without even knowing it. That's my advice. I hope that helps. I'm not sure if that made sense, but I was once in third world, and we came to America. Whether America's third world or not, that could be a philosophical discussion, which I cannot get into because I haven't thought about that. However, it is definitely a place of opportunity. Hollywood is in California, and it's kind of spreading. And sorry, my mind trailed off. I just wanted to say that now I'm cropped into the center frame. Now you'll see me do the same exact thing with the center of the painting. Anyway, the mind, you kind of grow with that. I mean, it's not. I lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. I'm ranting. Just keep pushing towards the direction that you want to be going in. That's my honest, simple advice. To sum it up. I'm always when I explain stuff, I always want to try to give metaphors and examples. I apologize for that, people. It's just how my mind works sometimes, and it can be a little boring. And all right, already, get to it. So I understand if anybody's feeling that. If not, thank you for sticking through it. So I hope that helped. The Art of the Brave. Are you eyeballing any photo ref in your work, or is it all straight out of your head? I am using a reference image, which is in the beginning of the stream. However, all the figures and the beams and the wires, that's kind of out of my head. Sammy asks, and thank you for that question, Hossam, and the Art of the Brave. Sammy asks, would you recommend to start looking for work at VFX companies to get a job as a keyframe illustrator? How would you put your foot in the door in the film industry? Yes, look anywhere. Anywhere film industry, look anywhere. And once you're in, play along, play ball. And then when you feel the opportunity, react to it without hesitation. And that's how you can grow within the industry. I would say start anywhere, personally. And that's how you also establish contacts. That's how you establish connections. People that can help you out in the future, lend you a hand. Now you see me here painting into these dark masses here, sort of getting a nice textural feel, a buttery feel to the darks. And it's important to me because as in terms of, and I'm doing it with a mixer brush, in terms of the filmic quality, the look of a film, the 24 still images per second, it gives off that type of flicker, that type of noise that you would otherwise sense. You only sense it. And that feeling you develop over time in terms of how much of it needs to be there. Alex, you ask, did you intentionally increase your social media presence after Spider-Man? I feel like your popularity and presence blew up very quickly a few years ago after Spider-Man came out. That's a great question. I think I kind of did. I did do that after Spider-Man. I sort of embraced what was happening in terms of social media. But I've always gone with the idea that I'm happy to share my work with people and get a reaction of them. That's what I love. What I would hate is if all that shut down because of some weird political reason. I don't know what that would be. Like if it suddenly disappeared or we're not allowed to do it because of this. I'm very grateful for, always have been, for working at Marvel and what Marvel brings to an artist's rapport. It's a very distant word for me that I haven't used in a long time. It definitely helped with social media presence, but I never really was actively chasing that. I was very appreciative of it and respecting it, but I'm not. I don't think I was someone who was constantly on that. Some I know friends that are and take it a lot more seriously than I do. But it's not that I don't take it seriously. I just I kind of realized that it's a nice thing, it's a cool thing, and I continued with it. And this whole entire YouTube channel really is more or less a culmination of ideas, and if anything, a leading idea by Jenny. And she inspired me to do these live streams, and I don't know why I never thought about this on my own. I was like, live painting, really? Like, I never thought about them. And when she mentioned it to me, I was like, that's actually a brilliant idea. I don't think I am social media savvy, and if it wasn't for her and friends of mine who showed me the value of it or the potential of it, I probably wouldn't be on social media much. However, I do remember CG Hub, and I do know ArtStation, and that's in a way social media. So maybe in one way or another, I would have discovered it to be something of a valuable way to let your work out there. I definitely think Instagram and ArtStation or your own website are great sources for people to discover your work. So always be posting on that, if anything. The Art of the Brave. Thanks for your answer, Alex. So I suppose using a piece of reference that can really help you extrapolate lighting and palette to the parts of the image you're inventing. Yeah. Yes, I always work with something of that nature. Sometimes I start a piece completely out of my head, but I bring it back to reference. Sometimes I do that as well. Like, I just start and then I'm okay, now I'm gonna find something that could help me with what I've established. Excuse me, I'm just drinking water. So at this point, I'm still listening to the music, and there's times in between when you see me cut to the other image, the other crops. Those moments I took small breaks. This isn't all in one sit down. Those moments I took small breaks and I actually worked more on the track or the way the sound should feel. And it's about flipping through reference and getting different sound tastes in mind and whatnot. So that's also something to consider, is that when I created the sketch initially, the line drawing, I let it sit there, and when I came back, if I still felt as strong about it, I continue it. Otherwise, I probably just kind of change it or adjust it to. A lot of times I end up simplifying it, my original drawing, but in this case, it actually was working well. I was very happy with it. I could play the music for you guys here again. I know this is a cropped version, but let me just show you guys how I went through this. Originally, it started with a low hum, and this is what I had. I pick up a synth. Where is this? Okay. Oddly enough, my audio is not working for the synth here. Let me see what I'm doing wrong. Oh yeah, here we go. So I started off with this. This was the first note, the first tone I established. No percussion, no rhythm. And then I thought I needed something lower, a bass, something that would go together with the darks. And I would balance that on its own. This is the bass. This is the uneasy aspect of, unsettling aspect of the shot. This is what makes your stomach turn. This is the character of the world. This is the color. The greens and the yellows and the browns, the grays. And this is the story. This is the phone. And this is the camera movement. This is the camera slowly pushing in the ambience of the world. People talking. The unsettling undertone. So that's the gist of it. But then I add an element of percussion, which is a sample from a sample. It's a breakbeat, which I've slowed down. And that's it's a drum and bass. It's from Amen, the Amen brothers. It's one of the most used samples in a lot of electronic music, breakbeat music. You actually hear it constantly through Pi, the movie Pi by Darren Aronofsky. The entire soundtrack is all, pretty much almost all of it is Amen Brothers samples. And I don't want to be devaluing. The soundtrack is amazing. But this is the genre. This is the if there's going to be gunfire, if there's going to be action, this is the style, I guess, because it could go without it, but this is what it sounds like. So I play with that, and eventually I'll play the full track. I kind of want it to go back to the wide, so you see what I'm talking about. We're on a crop here, but the track builds up, and as the track builds up, I feel like the focus and the intention to the actual piece is revealed as the music unfolds. Now, here's an interesting part is, how can I ever get someone to experience it the way I experience it. So I've been posting my music with the pieces on a SoundCloud, and I have been sharing that. But it's an interesting thing to think about, even for work. Like, how can I ever get Kevin Feige to listen to my music with my piece without going, "What the hell is this? I'm wasting my time," which is my fear. You don't want to waste a man's time. So, yeah, I at that point, it's best to keep it for personal work. If anything, you kind of just want to develop that skill, regardless whether it could be used for work or not. Somebody asked a question here. Hussam asks, is it a must for the artist to be in US to be a part of Hollywood movies? No, not really. Not today. Maybe that was like that before, but Marvel especially can now hire people outside of the US a lot more often. It's changing and is becoming a bit more open and flexible, which is nice. Oh, also, because of the recent... here I am cropping into the phone. Yes, my favorite part. The part that needs to be resolved. I think this is where I started to realize that this needs to work. This needs to make sense. This detail here needs to make sense. Otherwise, this piece is just just another piece for me. That's my personal thing. Anyway, because of the whole COVID thing that exploded, we have had the ability to work from home. And as far as Marvel goes, a lot of us that have been working with Marvel proved that we can just do this stuff from home. And I think for a lot of companies, it has sort of shaped that knowledge. And a lot of companies have realized, well, we could just work remotely. Why not? Why not? I personally think that's such a beautiful way to do things. One of my personal goals is to be able to travel and work. I want to just be somewhere else at times and just paint on my laptop. And that's a beautiful thing. That's full of inspiration and mood, and I think an artist needs that. We need to experience the world to improve our work. Otherwise, you can become kind of repetitive on your own. If you're still in this, if you're in the same place, you either should have some type of a chamber that you float in water. I forgot what those are called. Blah 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 chambers. Sorry. I'm not making sense here, but or taking a lot of showers and thinking of stories, or locking yourself in a dark room and imagining things. It sounds weird to say it like this, but that's I feel like that's what nature or being out or being in different places gives to your mind as an artist, is inspiration, stories. Like, you think of things without even thinking about it, without even planning it. It comes to you. So One of the ways that I do that for myself here, a lot of the times stories come to me when I'm in the shower. I mean, it happens for a lot of artists, or while I'm driving, or while I'm making music, of course. But I used to do this on deliberately. I would be in a room with very little light, and I'd shut off any type of lights, and I would stare into the darkness, and that would inspire types of imagery. And it wasn't necessarily dark, it was just vivid. It makes the mind start having thoughts involuntarily, and you play with that. You kind of exploit your own brain. Here I am indicating the dial on the phone, but I'm still keeping it fairly loose. Here's another thing about insecurity. When I was going out of Art Center, I was being told, you need to learn to render. You can indicate well, but you need to learn to render. And your indication says the detail, but when we looked closely, you need to learn how to render that stuff out. So I was very confused for a while. I'm like, what does that mean? Not to say that I was pro or at the level I am right now back then, but I was definitely so influenced by looking at Sargent and hearing people talk about, like, that's what painting is, man, and all that stuff. So I would take it defensively. So when I started working in the game company and other places before I broke through film, when I would hear that feedback, like, this needs to be a bit more rendered out, my mind would go back to Art Center. And I would lock up and I'd be like, I guess I need to think of it as a ball, start rendering the dark side, the light side, and then think about this as a ball because it's two balls to put together, and now it's shaping the deltoid and what it can lead to is not yourself. A lot of the times it leads to the thinking in a form of blueprint and just maybe not how your mind is supposed to feel or execute things. And that just took time, persistence to break through it, to persevere and be strong through moments like that where maybe I really can do it my way. I'm just not doing it good enough. Because I would look at constantly. I would be looking at Sargent paintings. I'm like, this guy. They're all the company's all referencing this Sargent painting. It's on their wall. Like, we want this game to feel like this painting. And I look at it, and they're going, yeah, look how detailed that is, and look how, you gotta render it like he rendered. And I'm thinking, he didn't render. You zoom into that hand, it's 3 strokes. But it's not, but I would never express my thoughts like that. I wouldn't dare. I wouldn't argue with them. I wish I had. I wish I'd had the nerve and seen what would have happened then. Maybe it would have taken me into a different place. Maybe it would have just gotten me fired, given me a bad name. Would have made it probably harder for me to establish a foothold in the industry. There's a starting artist. Not starving, not starving, starting. I repeat. Okay. So I would kind of go back and forth with my own work, and and it really came down to just admitting and being truthful and understanding understanding what exactly it is when it comes to rendering, what it means. Does it really mean painting eyelash after eyelash and rendering the form of the eyelash? Think of it as a cone, a very tapered cone. No. It's the beginning part of that. It was realizing that the focal point they want to see is not clear enough. So let's make sure the focal point has a good amount of contrast. And that came from starting when that realization came when I started in film, and I started to pay attention to film references, and I started to pay attention or remember my film studies, because I did do film studies in Art Center, and it's like they were forgotten. I did it, and it was probably my most favorite thing ever, and then it was just forgotten until I picked it up again when I was in the film industry. Hey, Jason. Glad to see you on here. Thank you, man. It's a pleasure streaming. I think this is about close to its final stage, and then you'll see all of these crops together in a more I get not tighter, but just a bit more defined. See, what I'm doing here is indicating. You can take this and consider it as rendering. Another thing I didn't understand is when people say it looks too cartoony. It's kind of cartoony. I never understood what that meant. To this very day, I don't. I kind of think about it as like, it's probably not representing reality the way they expect it to represent. So cartoony is what? I forget about it. Just continue making the piece more real. I used to hear that. I still do sometimes when I work for independent clients and all that. It's like, I don't want it cartoony. But, on that subject, I was trying to remember a time when that happened. It's another learning experience. You kind of learn how to communicate with your client. It's about asking the question in return. What do you mean by cartoony? How do you see this as cartoony? What part? I would start asking stuff like, okay, what part? And sometimes it's just as vague. It's like, well, just the whole image is kind of cartoony. It's goofy. I mean, the colors are vibrant. It's kind of cartoony. So it's the colors. Is that it? Yeah, the colors are so vibrant. Okay. I desaturated. Oh, perfect. Man, because you could have gotten me on a goose chase. Cartoony? I'm thinking Spunko, Ren, and Stimpy. Good thing we cleared that up. Asking questions is good, always, when you're working with someone who doesn't understand you. You lead them with questions, and you make them sort of give you the answer that you want, that you need. Yeah, Alex, I think asking questions in a meeting when they're giving you the assignment is important. Whatever you it might not be clear. I haven't really had that happen to me at Marvel because I mean our supervisors are brilliant artists themselves and they know exactly how to present what we need. But when it's outside that box and you're dealing with a producer or production designer. Not to say that all production designers are not artists, but a lot of the time they don't come from a background that we do. And you're taking in what they think should be. That's when you want to ask what would help, what you think would help them get the best out of you. I think that's important to also know, as opposed to asking what is your favorite thing. Like, can this look like a David Fincher movie? No, it's Star Trek. No. Can it have like red fog? I like red fog. What are you talking about? I'm exaggerating. I don't think that has ever happened. Maybe it has, but not with the teams I've worked with. Actually, I don't think I've ever talked about this. I'm going to backtrack a lot here. Before I started working ever in high school, I had a summer job for a school that taught stop motion. I used to animate. I used to do stop motion animation. And one day I'll dig up those VHS and I'll transfer it to digital and I'll share it. I was very proud of it. Kind of good, kind of okay for that age, for that time. But I remember working with team back then, and I remembered how I used to behave as a team member, and how know-it-all and cocky I was. Like, oh, this is not animation. This is how you do animation. Leave me alone. I don't think I ever said leave me alone, but they did put me in a booth where the camera setup was and the glass plates were, because it was flat. It was flat animation. It's flat stop motion animation. So the different layers of glass are set up. So there's a there you go. Anyway, I was gonna just mention. Actually, I'm sorry. Maybe this story could be good for another time because I might overlap what's happening here. I wanted to talk about this. So once I feel like the painting is at a good stage where I stop painting into it, I go into camera raw and I start to do a bit of a color correction. I bring the lights and the darks to where they need to be. And then I bring up the saturation to where it needs to be. Alex, you ask, have you ever had to deal with working on a movie you didn't really believe in? If so, how did you manage? No. I mean, I guess you could see it that way, but I believed in every movie, even if I didn't think it was going to be anything. I tried to make it something amazing in my mind, and in doing that and following what they need at the same time, you end up delivering pretty powerful work for them, pretty evocative, if anything. And you're satisfied, they're satisfied, and then you move on. Whether the movie was going to make it, I realized kind of early on, it's really not up to you. It's kind of up to you for the pitch to go well, so you better do well with your art. But if you're the only one creating the art pitch, for example, or if it's the team. But let's say I'm on a big production. Let's say I'm on Call of the Wild, which I was on. Did I believe in the movie? Yeah, I thought this could be great. Was the movie going the way I thought it would go? No. Did it bother me? Not so much, because I established a good back and forth with the people I was working with, and that kept me going. That kept me coming back. When there's none of that in a company, in a team, when there's just quietness and no feedback, the first thing that goes through my head is like, I just want to be home working for this. Why do I have to come to a cubicle and no one's here? But that's only happened to me like once or twice. So yeah, in terms of believing if it's affected, no, I kind of, I make it in my mind something good. So anyway, stop motion. That was a great question, by the way, Alex. Stop motion. That was my first job, and I remember one time we were grabbing Starbucks across the street of this school. It was during a lunch break somewhat. And I was a hyper kid in high school. I was just not, I was immature and all of the above. And we're grabbing coffee, and I asked questions about work. Like, I forgot what it was, but it was like, do you guys think this, and that, and this? And one of the lead guys, lead quote unquote, I mean, they were all kind of high school kids with a summer job. One was a character designer, and my friend was the character sculptor, and so on and so forth. So I asked the question, and in return, I got a response of like, yeah, okay, whatever. That, like, literally kind of a, you want me to take you serious right now? And that got me spiraling into insecurities. Anyway, here right now I'm blurring the image because I want to soften all the edges ever so slightly. That happens in a moving frame, especially if the camera is pushing forward. I'm using a path blur, and with the speed of the angle and the low speed, it's just enough. When I zoom in, it's just enough to where it's not super blurry. And I add just a little bit of grain, which comes with the noise under the blur, and it breaks up the edges. I do that, I think, every now and then. Very minor difference, but you know what? It adds to it. Sometimes, in the more recent work that I've been doing with Marvel, I haven't been doing that. And instead, I let the noise of the paint and the nuances do that for me, which kind of also is happening here. Like in certain corners and clothing, there's a part of breakup that also could feel like noise. And I up-res it. And it does something else to the edges from 4K to 8K. But I think I undid that. Went back to 4K. Now I'm adjusting the color balance, seeing the range of all these things, seeing what I could get out of it. I push it to its max, back and forth. I'm like, oh, okay, there's something interesting about the yellow. I know I made a note of that maybe. I'm seeing how it feels. For the darks, I'm not going all the way because just a little bit is already enough. And I really like that yellow when I'm under shadows. But yeah, I'm not sure if I stuck with this. I do that with every piece. I kind of test it around. And that is the piece. This is what it is. And I can show you guys the actual piece here. I think the video is almost over. Yeah, the video is over. So this is the piece. This was the reference. These are the images of reference, but I'm looking at it upside down. And this is the piece. And this is the music. And that's what it is for now. It's on loop, and I'll continue developing and make it into a track, and eventually you'll see it up on SoundCloud. But that was it for the painting demo, guys. Thank you so much for being here and participating and asking these beautiful questions and watching me paint or watching a video of me paint. It was a great pleasure to share all this information. And, you know, in terms of your struggles as an artist and overcoming them, don't my pure advice is don't let anything take you down. Don't let any little discrepancy, noise, or what someone said bring you down. If anything, use it to create with. Use it as a positivity, because creating is a positive thing. Obstacles are hills you walk over, and you only get better and better at walking over those hills. There are no walls. Granted, there's sometimes situations that could really test your ability to stay on track. But as long as you have a clear goal in you, you will get through the hardest times and get to where you need to be. That's my firm belief, no matter what it takes. I used to tell myself, it's either this or I don't exist. I don't know how to do anything else. And sometimes that's what you need to get yourself to think. Even if there are other things you can do, if there are plenty of other things, if it's about a job and earning money, you can go out right now and get a job. You scout for a week, you will find a job. Might not be art, but if it's about earning money, bread to feed your family, you can do it. But getting to an end goal in art, in this industry, even forget about industry, in discovering yourself as an artist, to becoming strong, that's, no one could take that away from you, and that's something that you should always keep on molding and massaging and carving and punching into the ground until it's something blooms out of it. Like I said earlier, you kind of have to be obsessive and crazy about your work. Not like the guy from Shine. You know, he played a piano almost butt naked. You don't have to be that. Maybe that's what it takes for some, but you know, you have to embrace everything, even your fears, and turn that into a work of art. So I hope that helps. I hope that's inspiring, and thank you everybody for being here. And I will see you in the next live stream someday. I'll let you guys know. And if anybody has questions or suggestions, please leave it in the comments, and I will reply and take anything else in consideration. Okay. Have a nice weekend and a beautiful week. See you guys.